happens to be the Unit 6 review, which only has Chapter 9 in it. Hopefully I just got word through my computer that my internet connection is unstable. But we're going to battle through this. Okay. So, here we go. Boom.
If you get a virus, you can just blame the school for not providing adequate security.
I should do that.
On that angle, you can look at where my sauce
In the corner.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody puts Coach V in the corner.
Yeah.
Tons of references today. Okay, here we go. Developmental psychology. It's exactly what you think it is. It is how we kind of grow, not only physically, but psychologically, socially, across the lifespan. So this is what this entire chapter is about. I also communicated to you before that this is kind of the second installment. This is like Psych 102 or like Psych 200 or whatever it is in college. This will be the second psychology that you take. One thing that we have to understand is that it's not necessarily how we're going to view it. It's not step by step necessarily. It's more like a gradual, climb up a mountain and then a pretty steep decline on the other side. And we'll talk about all of those things. So at first you do have to know these biological terms: zygote, which is a single cell that you start out as. The chromosome, so thread-like structure composed of the twisted parallel strands of DNA, right, the double helix. DNA encodes genetic instructions, the chemical basis of heredity. Gene is the individual unit of DNA. Let's see. Genotype is your genetic makeup. Don't get it confused with phenotype, which is your physical, observable physical traits. The human genome is the complete set of DNA in the human organism. Like I said, when I was in high school, that wasn't complete. Now it is. Alleles are genes that come in different versions. So you think, this is when you talk about dominant recessive stuff. I don't get into that. I hope that biology has covered that for you if you've taken it. Sex chromosome, 23rd pair. That's what you kind of need to understand. Every egg cell has an X chromosome. Every sperm cell has either one X or one Y chromosome. And then we have the certain combinations that follow along with that, right? XY resulting in a male and XX resulting in a female. So kind of understand that that might be asked. I mean, you could see that. That's more of a biology question, but they might throw it out there. Again, this exam isn't made to be perfect. Phenotype, we already went over. Observable traits. Epigenetics is the study of the mechanisms that control gene expression and its effects on behavior and health. One thing that we have to understand is that the environment switches genes on, off. The environment and genetics play upon one another. Remember, usually the answer to the question of, is it genetics or is it the environment? Usually the question whenever it comes to psychology, or the answer when it comes to psychology to that question is both. Okay? So, we've kind of seen that throughout our entire curriculum. Alright, so stages of prenatal development. We have 3 of them. Germinal, embryonic, and fetal periods. The germinal period is basically your still cells, right? The embryonic period, right, extending from the 3rd week through the 8th week, rapid growth, intensive cell differentiation, organs, major systems of the body form, and that lasts pretty much, past the 8th week. Remember I told you there's an old wives' tale, don't tell anybody you're pregnant until after your 8th week of pregnancy, because it's a very volatile situation before that, and it might not necessarily work out. I guess miscarriages are kind of a touchy subject to talk about, but they're quite common. And are they terrible to deal with? Yes, for sure, but a lot of people deal with that during this period. Teratogens, anything that can harm the baby, cross into the baby's bloodstream from the mother's, so the placenta can't really protect it. So exposure to radiation, toxic chemicals like mercury, viruses and bacteria, herpes, HIV, rubella, drugs taken by the mother such as alcohol, cocaine, and heroin, prescription painkillers, and other prescription and non-prescription drugs can have an effect as well. And then alcohol, there's a specific one that we kind of know about a little bit, fetal alcohol syndrome, and that is excessive drinking in the first trimester. The first trimester, okay? All right, so stem cells, undifferentiated cells that can divide and give rise to cells that can develop into any one of the body's different cell types. So yeah, I'm not going to get into like an argument or what the argument is about stem cells or anything like that, but guess what? They're good, and research on them really has provided some really, really beneficial things for humans. Then we have the longest period, which is the fetal period. So the 9th week until birth. In the 3rd month, fetus can move its arms, legs, mouth, head. 4th month, the mother experiences this thing called quickening, that's whenever you can actually feel the fetus move. 5th month, all the brain cells the person will have at birth are present. The fetus now has distinct sleep-wake cycles and periods of activity. The 6th month, the fetus's brain activity becomes similar to that of a newborn baby. And then the final 2 months, we build up body fat because we're about to have the craziest experience of our entire lives. Okay? Where you exit an environment that you've been in for 9, 10 months into a world that is bright, cold, loud. It really, truly might be the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to any one of us. We don't remember it, which is cool. All right, you're born with rooting reflex, sucking reflex, and grasping reflex. Remember, don't get confused between rooting and sucking reflex. Rooting would be touching the cheek and then turning to find the food source. Sucking is actually getting the food out of the source. And then grasping, remember that a newborn baby can grab onto your fingers so tightly that you can just hang there like monkey bars. Okay? Let's see, vision, hearing, smell, touch, keenly attuned to people. Please know that vision is the least developed sense at birth. Babies are super nearsighted. So, holding them about 6 to 12 inches away from the caregiver's face provides, a clear shot at, the caregiver, which is important. Remember that we are born to recognize and pick up faces. It's like number 1 skill for a human. Check. Pick up faces. Okay? There we go. I guess this is all some motor development graph here. All right, babies, temperament. You could be born with 3 types of temperament, and they're super easy to understand. Easy, the baby's easy, right? Difficult, the baby's difficult. Slow to warm up, kind of shy, and then kind of warms up in certain situations, social situations, whatever. Other temperaments in terms of reactivity, so how the baby actually reacts. So we have high reactive infants and low reactive infants. High reactive infants tend to be tense, fearful, and inhibited. Low reactive All right, they're exposed to new people and they don't react very extreme, right? So yeah, they're low reactive. Temperaments are not a destiny. Okay, the environment's probably going to change everything for you. Imprinting, that's just a term that we use for, you know, becoming attached to a caregiver. Does that caregiver have to be the person who birthed you? Or has to be the person that was involved in the conception to birth you? No, not at all. I know plenty of people who have imprinted upon their grandparents, right? Their foster parents, their adopted parents, whatever it is. I mean, like, what it was, you know. So quarantine's never over. So attachment, the emotional bond that forms between an infant and a caregiver, especially his or her parents. Who studied this? This woman named Mary Ainsworth. She did this, you know, experiment called the strange situation, where they definitely found out through, you know, the caregiver, usually the mother, leaving a certain room, leaving the baby with the stranger, and watching the reactions of the baby. Okay, and she came up with secure and insecure attachment. So secure attachment, the needs will be met by the caregivers. This is kind of weird. Whenever you have secure attachment, you cry whenever the caregiver leaves. Why? Because the caregiver is giving you what you need, and if the caregiver isn't there, you're scared that you won't get what you need. Food, warmth, play, attention, right? And then insecure attachment may develop if the parent is neglectful, inconsistent, or insensitive to moods and behaviors of the infant. Meaning that if the caregiver leaves in the strange situation, the baby doesn't care, the baby doesn't cry. The baby just continues on because the caregiver means almost nothing to the baby. Attachment theory is a psychological model. So Mary Ainsworth, worked with this guy named John Bowlby, and he did the exact same thing that she did with infants, except with World War II veterans that came back and became homeless. He fed them, and guess what? They became attached to him because he was giving them what they needed to survive. Language development, we have Noam Chomsky, you know, really eclectic guy. But for us, he'd be possibly known as the father of modern linguistics. He says that every child has this like innate ability to learn language. And for a while, it doesn't matter what language that is. But then you get to around 10 months, and then you start focusing in on the native language spoken in your house. Okay? So that's what he kind of comes up with. So, you know, another term that you see here is motherese, and that's just like that baby talk that mothers or fathers or anybody uses towards babies or pets, you know. And then we have cooing and babbling. How do I know the difference between these two things? Cooing has more vowels, so that's what I remember, right? Repeated vowel sounds, ooh, ah, all right, ee. And then babbling, you start adding consonants in. So mama, dada, you know, they might call their pacifier something like a, well, my kid calls it a papa, right, a papa. So one word stage of language development comes around the first birthday. They start saying one word. Have to understand this, that the comprehension vocabulary is so much greater than the production vocabulary when it comes to an infant. You know, my kid right now is almost going to turn 2 years old in July, and that kid can understand almost everything that I say, but it can't produce what it can understand. Okay? Still difficult to kind of understand what they want if they decide to talk. and not just point at something. So the 2-word stage of language development happens around the 2nd birthday, mama go, no potty. Yeah, I'm watching that happen right now. Maturation, just please understand, you know, this is the unfolding of genetically programmed processes of growth and development over time. It has nothing to do with, you know, maturity. You know, he's mature for his age or whatever you want to say like that. No, not for us, not in this psychology class. Maturation is literally the unfolding of genetic programming as you get older. All right, we're not going to go through these things. All right, so let's go through some models of development. This is Piaget, a Swiss psychologist. He comes up with cognitive development models. So sensorimotor stage, preoperational stage, concrete operational stage, and formal operational stage. So 4 cognitive levels that you are privileged to reach milestones and get to the next one as a human. So let's talk about these things. So sensorimotor stage, I mean, you just look at the title and you kind of understand what it is, right? You're judging everything by your senses and your motor skills are forming, all that kind of stuff. But one important thing happens here, and it's called object permanence. The understanding that an object continues to exist even when it can no longer be seen. That means that my almost 2-year-old at my house right now understands that I am alive and I exist even though he cannot see me right now. That's object permanence. It's peekaboo. It's getting really good at the game of peekaboo. The preoperational stage, so you know this comes before logical thought. So this lasts about 2 to 7 years old, increasing use of symbols and pre-logical thought processes. So we have problems with egocentrism, right? So the inability to take another person's perspective or point of view. Irreversibility, the difficulties with the ability to reverse a pattern or a sequence of events. And then centration, the tendency to focus or center on only one aspect of a situation and ignore other important aspects of the situation. If you've ever been around toddlers, this is a real thing. So milestones reached, symbolic thought. So the ability to use words, images, and symbols to represent the world. And then the kicker is conservation. So this is understanding that 2 equal quantities remain equal even though the form or appearance is rearranged, as long as nothing is added or subtracted. We watched a video on this of people pouring juice into different beakers, I think. And we also watched these kids with these graham crackers and these quarters, and they were manipulated, the lines were manipulated in front of them. And some of them passed and some of them didn't. And it was according to age. So, you know, again, this is pre-logical thought. Once you hit conservation, though, and you get good at it, boom, you're in concrete operational stage. This means that you can understand logically what's going on with certain situations as long as it's in front of you, okay? That it's there, it's in the present moment. So what do we have problems with in this stage? Hypothetical situations, abstract ideas, forethought, the ability to understand that my actions now actually dictate what happens later on in my life. That's difficult for these people, these kids in concrete operational stage. So, and then all of us, Piaget says, we all are here right now. Formal operational stage. So the 4th stage of cognitive development, which lasts from adolescence through adulthood, is characterized by the ability to think logically about abstract principles and hypothetical situations, to understand that your actions now actually matter in the future. Okay? Abstract thought. This is a great thing to study. Okay? Check it out on your own time. It is in the notes that I provided you. Criticisms of Piaget's theory. Honestly, you know, I don't know if you'll be asked this or not, but pretty much object permanence actually happens earlier than what Piaget imagined. And then we have Lev Vygotsky, which he comes up with this thing called the zone of proximal development. And it basically says, you know, what can you do by yourself and what can you do with help? And as long as you're around people who can actually help you, you actually learn quicker, okay? You hit these milestones faster and faster because you have people who can help you through these things. Then there's the information processing model of cognitive development. It views that cognitive development is a process that is continuous over the lifespan and that studies the development of basic mental processes such as attention, memory, and problem solving. Basically saying that this never stops, right? Once you get abstract thought, it never stops. You keep on getting better and better and better at abstract thought. Theory of mind, it's a great attribute to have to understand that other people have different viewpoints than you. That other people have lived a different life than you. That other people have experienced things and those experiences have shaped their cognitive viewpoints, their mental processes. It's something that I think that we all inherently understand. Sometimes just coming, you know, to grips with that other people have lived different lives than you and think differently than you. You know, once you realize that, and I don't think you really care that much about what other people think. Animistic thinking, we've talked about this several times, but inanimate objects are imagined to have life and mental processes. Look at old Lightning McQueen right there, boy. Stickers.
Yeah, no, I forgot that.
All right, some terms that you have to know, which I think you do. Adolescence, you know, pretty much the transition time between the end of childhood and the beginning of adulthood. Puberty, reaching sexual maturity. Primary sex characteristics would be considered, you know, testes and ovaries, penis, testicles, all that kind of stuff. Secondary sex characteristics would be like where you grow hair during puberty and breast development, all that kind of stuff. Adolescent growth spurt, that's when all, you know, 6th grade, 7th grade, Billy goes home for the summer. All of a sudden, he comes back in 8th grade, 6 inches taller, and he's going by William. You're like, what the? And then menarche is the female's first menstrual period. Don't get it confused with menopause. I think a lot of people honestly understand what menopause is.